No one wanted the veteran's flooded quarry. His German shepherd discovered a $300 million hidden treasure. What could be waiting inside a place everyone had already forgotten? How could a German shepherd uncover something connected to such an incredible discovery? Welcome, friends, and thank you for joining us today for another unforgettable story. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a powerful journey like this one. We truly appreciate your support and the time you spend with us. Tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Now let us begin the story. Some places are abandoned because they have nothing left to offer. But sometimes, they are abandoned because no one knows what they are hiding. Ethan Caldwell stood at the edge of the flooded quarry, looking across the still water that covered what many people in town considered worthless land. For years, the old quarry had been forgotten, left behind as nature slowly reclaimed the area. Nobody wanted it. Nobody believed it had any value. And that was exactly why Ethan accepted it. After decades of serving his country, the veteran was searching for something simple. Not wealth, not attention, just a quiet place where he could rebuild his life one peaceful day at a time. The small property came with an old house, a few acres of land, and a flooded quarry that most people considered a burden. When neighbors heard Ethan had taken ownership, they offered the same advice. Do not expect much from that place. Ethan simply smiled. He had learned long ago that appearances could be misleading. The quietest places often carried the deepest stories. Walking beside him was Ranger, his loyal German shepherd. The dog moved calmly through the property, observing everything with the careful attention that made him such a remarkable companion. Ranger had been with Ethan through difficult seasons of life, always staying close without needing anything in return. The bond between them was built on trust, not words. On their first morning at the quarry, Ethan walked along the edge of the water while Ranger explored nearby. The air was cool, and a soft mist rested above the surface. The only sounds were the gentle movement of water and the distant rustling of trees. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a strange sense of peace. This place was not beautiful in the way people usually described beautiful places. It was not polished or perfect, but it felt honest. As Ethan began cleaning the property, he noticed something unusual about Ranger. The German shepherd kept returning to the same section near the far side of the quarry. At first, Ethan thought the dog had simply found an interesting scent. Dogs notice things humans missed all the time. But Ranger continued coming back to that exact area day after day. He would stand quietly, looking toward the water as if something there had caught his attention. "What did you find, boy?" Ethan asked one evening. Ranger looked back at him before turning toward the quarry again. Ethan smiled. He did not know what the dog had noticed, but he trusted him enough to pay attention. The next morning, Ethan brought some basic equipment and walked toward the area Ranger had been watching. He expected nothing more than an ordinary discovery, maybe an old piece of equipment left behind from the quarry's past. But as he examined the shoreline, he noticed details that did not seem random. There were marks on an old structure near the water, almost hidden beneath years of weather and neglect. Ethan brushed away the dirt and studied what was underneath. Something about it felt different. The flooded quarry suddenly seemed less like an abandoned place and more like a forgotten chapter waiting to be opened. Ranger sat beside him, calm and patient, watching as Ethan looked closer. The veteran had arrived believing he was taking on a forgotten piece of land. He had no idea that this place, rejected by everyone else, was about to reveal a secret that had been waiting for someone willing to listen. The morning after Ranger discovered something unusual near the flooded quarry, Ethan Caldwell returned to the same area with a different feeling. The land that once seemed forgotten now carried a quiet mystery. The old structures, the marks, hidden beneath years of weather, and the German shepherd's strange attention all suggested that there was more to this place than anyone had realized. Ethan moved slowly along the shoreline, carefully examining every detail. He was not searching for riches or hoping to find something valuable. He simply wanted to understand why Ranger had been so focused on this one location. The veteran had learned that patience often revealed what rushing could never uncover. Ranger stayed close, watching every movement. The dog did not act excited or restless. He simply remained there, steady and loyal, as if reminding Ethan to keep looking. As the morning light spread across the water, Ethan noticed an old metal object partially hidden near the edge of the quarry. It was covered with signs of age, but its shape suggested it had once been important. He carefully moved it away from the dirt and examined it. Inside, he found a small collection of weathered papers sealed away from the elements. The discovery surprised him. These were not random pieces of trash left behind by workers. They appeared to be records from a much older time. Ethan carried everything back to the house and placed the documents on the wooden table near the window. The quiet cottage suddenly felt different. The old walls seemed to hold more memories than he had first imagined. Ranger rested nearby while Ethan carefully opened the papers. The writing was faded, but several words were still readable. There were references to the quarry, the land, and a name that appeared repeatedly throughout the documents. Ethan recognized that he was looking at something connected to the history of the property. Later that afternoon, Ethan visited the local library to learn more. He spent hours searching through old records and newspaper archives. He discovered that the quarry had once been a significant part of the community many decades earlier. Before the flooding, it had been owned by a family known throughout the area. However, after changes in ownership and years of uncertainty, the story of the land slowly disappeared. People remembered the quarry as an abandoned place, but few knew what had happened before it was forgotten. Ethan returned home that evening with more questions than answers. He sat on the porch with Ranger beside him, looking across the quiet property. "You knew something was here, didn't you?" Ethan said softly. The German shepherd lifted his head and looked toward the quarry. The moment made Ethan smile. He did not believe Ranger understood every word, but he understood the connection they shared. The next few days were spent researching every detail Ethan could find. He compared the old papers with public records and searched for information about the family connected to the quarry. The deeper he looked, the more unusual the story became. There were references to valuable assets, forgotten agreements, and a part of the property's history that had never been fully explained. Ethan began to realize that the flooded quarry was not just an abandoned location. It was a place where someone had left behind a story that had waited quietly for decades. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the trees, Ethan watched Ranger walking along the same path where the mystery began. The veteran had accepted the quarry because nobody wanted it. But now he wondered if everyone had overlooked something important. The place they rejected might have been the very place that was meant to be found. The old documents from the flooded quarry continued to sit on Ethan Caldwell's wooden table, quietly revealing pieces of a story that had been hidden for generations. Every evening after finishing his work around the property, Ethan returned to those faded pages. He studied the handwriting, the dates, and the names that appeared again and again. The more he learned, the more he realized the quarry was never just an abandoned piece of land. It was a place filled with memories that someone had tried to preserve. Ranger stayed close during every moment of research. The German shepherd often rested beside Ethan as he carefully examined the documents. The dog had started this journey by noticing something unusual, but Ethan now understood that the discovery was becoming something much bigger. It was not only about finding answers. It was about understanding the people who had left those clues behind. The following morning, Ethan visited the county records office to search for more information about the old quarry ownership. The building was quiet, filled with shelves of documents that carried pieces of local history. After several hours, Ethan found an old property record connected to the family name from the papers he discovered. The record showed that the quarry had once belonged to a family that invested years into developing the land. They were not famous, and their story was never written in major history books. They were simply people who built something meaningful and hoped it would continue for future generations. But something changed over time. The records became incomplete, ownership became complicated, and the quarry eventually faded from public attention. Ethan looked through the documents carefully and noticed a small reference that appeared several times. It mentioned a protected section of the property that was never included in later records. The note was brief, almost as if someone wanted only the right person to understand it. When Ethan returned home, he compared the note with the old papers found near the water. The details matched. A hidden section of the quarry had existed before the flooding changed the landscape. Ethan stood near the window, looking across the water while Ranger watched beside him. The veteran thought about how easily stories disappeared when no one remained to protect them. He understood that his discovery was not about proving everyone wrong. It was about giving forgotten people a chance to be remembered. Over the next few days, Ethan carefully explored the area around the quarry while respecting the condition of the property. He took photographs, recorded details, and continued studying the old documents. He noticed that several markings on the original papers seemed connected to specific locations around the land. Each clue created another question. Each answer revealed another part of the mystery. One afternoon, while walking with Ranger, Ethan noticed the dog stop near an old section of fencing. The German Shepherd looked toward a place where the ground appeared different from the surrounding area. Ethan approached slowly and examined the location. Hidden beneath years of weather and neglect was a small metal marker with faded writing. It was another piece of the forgotten story. Ethan carefully cleaned the surface and recognized the same family name from the earlier documents. His heart felt heavy with curiosity. Someone had intentionally left these signs behind. Someone had believed that one day, another person would find them. That evening, Ethan sat outside with Ranger as the sun reflected across the flooded quarry. The veteran thought about how different life felt compared to the day he arrived. He had accepted this property because nobody wanted it. But now he was beginning to understand that some things are overlooked not because they have no value, but because their value has not yet been discovered. Ranger rested beside him, calm and loyal. Together, they looked across the water that had hidden the next chapter of a story waiting to be uncovered. The discovery of the old metal marker changed the way Ethan Caldwell looked at the flooded quarry. What once appeared to be an abandoned piece of land now felt like a place carefully waiting to tell its story. The veteran spent each morning reviewing the documents he had found, comparing every detail with the markings around the property. Ranger remained beside him, always calm, always watching, as if he understood that every small clue mattered. The German Shepherd had opened the first door to the mystery, but Ethan knew the answers would come through patience and respect for the past. Ethan returned to the county records office with photographs of the marker and the documents from the quarry. He wanted to understand why someone had left behind signs connected to a hidden section of the property. After searching through older records, he discovered something unexpected. The quarry had once been connected to a private family project that was never fully documented. The records mentioned special storage areas built before the flooding changed the landscape. These areas were designed to protect important family belongings and records during uncertain times. Ethan carefully read every line, realizing that the people who created those hidden places were not trying to hide something from the world. They were trying to protect what mattered to them. That idea stayed with him. The mystery was becoming less about what could be found and more about why it had been protected for so long. When Ethan returned to the quarry, he walked along the edge of the water with Ranger beside him. The afternoon sun reflected across the surface, creating a peaceful scene that felt completely different from the place people had once dismissed. The veteran followed the old records and noticed several locations that matched the descriptions. One area near the quarry wall caught his attention. It was not obvious, but small details suggested that something had once existed there. Ethan carefully examined the surroundings and found another piece of evidence connected to the old family. It was a weathered metal container secured in a forgotten corner of the property. Inside were additional documents, photographs, and a handwritten note. The note was not a message about wealth. It was a message about responsibility. The writer explained that the items inside represented generations of hard work, family memories, and promises that should not disappear. Ethan sat quietly after reading those words. He thought about his own life and how many memories people carry without anyone knowing their importance. He understood that every person leaves behind a story, even if the world forgets to listen. That evening, Ethan shared his findings with a local historian named Margaret Ellis, who had spent years studying the history of properties throughout the region. When Margaret examined the documents, she immediately recognized that the quarry held a much deeper history than anyone believed. She explained that the family connected to the property had been respected in the area, but many records disappeared over time. Together, Ethan and Margaret began organizing the information. They created a timeline, compared names, and searched for connections between the past and present. Ranger stayed near them throughout the process, often resting under the table while they worked. The German Shepherd had become part of the story in a way no one expected. He was not searching for treasure. He was simply following something that led Ethan toward a forgotten truth. As the days passed, Ethan began to feel a change within himself. The quarry no longer represented a place where he had been left with something unwanted. It represented a responsibility he was grateful to carry. The veteran had arrived looking for a quiet place to start over, but he discovered something much greater. He discovered that even forgotten places could still have purpose. And somewhere beneath the history of the flooded quarry, another secret was waiting to be revealed. The discovery of the handwritten note inside the old metal container gave Ethan Caldwell and Margaret Ellis a clearer understanding of what the flooded quarry had been hiding for so many years. The documents did not reveal a simple forgotten possession. They revealed a carefully protected family legacy, a story built around trust, responsibility, and the hope that someone in the future would understand its meaning. Ethan spent the following days studying every page with patience. Ranger remained nearby, resting beside the table as the veteran carefully organized the information. The German Shepherd had led him to the first clue, but Ethan knew that the real journey was about discovering the people behind the mystery. Margaret continued researching the family connected to the quarry. She searched through historical archives, old newspapers, and property records that had been stored for decades. Slowly, a clearer picture began to appear. The family who once owned the land had been known for their careful work and strong connection to the community. They had built their success over many years, but changes in circumstances caused their story to slowly disappear from public memory. The flooded quarry became a forgotten place, and the details of what it once contained faded with time. One afternoon, Margaret arrived at Ethan's cottage with a folder filled with new information. Inside were records that connected the hidden documents to a much larger story. She explained that several references pointed toward valuable assets that had been placed in a protected location before the quarry changed forever. The exact details were still unclear, but the estimated value connected to the hidden collection was extraordinary. Ethan listened quietly as Margaret explained the possibility that the discovery could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. For a moment, the room became silent. Most people would have immediately thought about what that kind of value could change. But Ethan looked at the old photographs spread across the table. He thought about the people who had created those memories and why they had protected them. This was never meant to be just about money, Ethan said. Margaret nodded. She understood that his perspective was different. Throughout her career, she had seen people become focused on what they could gain from history. Ethan was focused on what he could preserve. The following week, Ethan and Margaret continued their investigation around the quarry. They carefully reviewed every clue and compared it with the information from the documents. Ranger followed them during each visit, walking along the property with the same quiet confidence he had shown from the beginning. The dog often stopped near certain areas, reminding Ethan that the first discovery had come from simple awareness. One evening, while reviewing the documents again, Ethan noticed a small detail he had missed before. A symbol appearing on one of the pages matched a marking found near the quarry. It suggested that another hidden location might exist nearby. Ethan and Margaret returned to the area the next morning. They did not rush. They understood that every part of the discovery carried history that deserved respect. As they examined the location, they uncovered another sealed section connected to the original family records. Inside were more preserved items, including additional photographs and documents that explained why the hidden collection had been created. Ethan read through the pages slowly. The message was clear. The family had not hidden these belongings because they wanted the world to forget them. They had protected them because they believed some things were too meaningful to lose. Standing beside the flooded quarry that evening, Ethan felt a deep connection to the story unfolding around him. The place everyone rejected had become a bridge between generations. Ranger sat beside him, watching the water quietly reflect the fading sunlight. The veteran realized that the greatest discovery was not the value attached to what they found. It was the reminder that forgotten things could still matter, and sometimes the smallest sign of loyalty could lead someone toward the truth they were meant to find. The days following the latest discovery at the flooded quarry brought a new sense of responsibility to Ethan Caldwell. The hidden collection was no longer just a mystery waiting to be solved. It was a piece of history connected to real people, real memories, and a family story that had nearly disappeared with time. Ethan understood that what he had found needed more than curiosity. It needed respect. Each morning, he sat at the old wooden table inside the cottage, carefully reviewing the documents with Margaret Ellis. The papers revealed more details about the family who once owned the property and the reasons behind the hidden collection. The belongings had been protected during a period of uncertainty, not because they were meant to be forgotten, but because someone believed they deserved to survive for future generations. Ranger remained close throughout the process. The German Shepherd often rested near Ethan's chair, quietly watching as the story unfolded. To Ethan, the dog was more than the companion who discovered the first clue. Ranger was a reminder that some of the most important moments in life begin with something small and unexpected. As Margaret continued researching, she uncovered additional records that explained the true scale of the hidden assets connected to the quarry. The estimated value was far greater than anyone in the community had imagined. The discovery had the potential to completely change Ethan's future. But instead of excitement, Ethan felt a deeper question forming in his mind. What was the right thing to do? The answer came easily. The veteran had spent his life believing in responsibility. He knew that something valuable did not automatically belong to the person who found it. It belonged to the people connected to its story. Margaret noticed the way Ethan approached the situation. She had expected questions about ownership and financial decisions, but Ethan focused on finding the rightful connection to the past. His priority was not what he could gain. It was what he could restore. News about the discovery slowly reached the local community. People who once dismissed the flooded quarry as useless began looking at it differently. They started sharing old stories about the land and remembering details that had been forgotten over the years. Some neighbors brought photographs and family records that helped fill gaps in the timeline. The quarry was becoming a place where memories were returning. One afternoon, Ethan stood near the water with Ranger beside him. He looked across the same area that everyone had ignored for so long. The surface was calm, reflecting the sky above. It was difficult to believe that such an ordinary-looking place had carried such an important secret. "You knew there was something here," Ethan whispered to Ranger. The German Shepherd looked up at him with quiet attention before returning his gaze toward the quarry. Ethan smiled. He knew the dog could not explain what he sensed, but their connection had always been built on trust beyond words. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Margaret worked to verify every detail before making any decisions about the hidden treasure. They contacted experts, reviewed historical information, and carefully preserved everything they found. The process was slow, but Ethan believed the story deserved patience. One evening, Margaret placed a final document on the table. It contained information that connected the hidden collection to descendants of the original family. After years of separation, the path toward reconnecting them was finally becoming clear. Ethan looked at the document and felt something he had not felt in a long time. Hope. The flooded quarry had given him more than a discovery. It had given him a purpose. He arrived believing he was accepting a forgotten piece of land. Instead, he found a story waiting to be completed. And beside him, Ranger remained faithful, the same loyal German Shepherd who had quietly guided him toward the truth hidden beneath the surface. The discovery of the documents connecting the flooded quarry to the descendants of the original family changed everything for Ethan Caldwell. For weeks, the veteran and Margaret Ellis had carefully followed every clue, making sure that every detail was understood before taking the next step. They knew the hidden collection was valuable, but they also knew its true importance came from the story behind it. The quarry was not just a place where something had been forgotten. It was a place where memories had been waiting to return home. Ethan spent his mornings preparing the records and organizing the information they had gathered. Ranger stayed close, often lying beside the table as pages from the past were carefully placed in order. The German Shepherd had become part of the journey in a way that no one could have predicted. He was the first to notice what others overlooked, but his greatest gift was not discovery. It was the quiet loyalty that reminded Ethan to keep moving forward. Margaret eventually located several people connected to the family that once owned the quarry. They lived in different parts of the country and had only pieces of information about their family history. Many had heard stories from older relatives about a property near water, but no one knew exactly where it was or what had happened to the belongings connected to it. When Margaret shared the details of the discovery, they were surprised. Some could hardly believe that a place from their family's past had remained hidden for so many years. The first descendants arrived at the quarry on a peaceful afternoon. Ethan watched from a distance as they walked through the property with a mixture of curiosity and emotion. They carried old photographs, handwritten notes, and memories passed down through generations. As they entered the cottage, they began recognizing small details that matched the stories they had heard as children. A window in an old photograph was still there. A corner of the room looked exactly like a place described by a grandparent many years earlier. The connection between past and present felt almost impossible to describe. Ethan stood quietly near the doorway, allowing them to experience the moment without interruption. He understood that this was their history, not his. He had only been the person who helped bring it back. Later that evening, one of the descendants named Thomas spoke with Ethan beside the quarry. He explained that his family had always wondered what happened to certain records and belongings that seemed to disappear over time. They never imagined that the answers would be waiting inside a forgotten property that almost nobody wanted. Ethan listened carefully. He realized that the quarry had connected people who had been separated by decades. The value of the discovery was no longer measured by the amount written in financial records. It was measured by the smiles, memories, and relationships being restored. As the sun lowered over the water, Ranger walked beside Ethan along the edge of the property. The German shepherd moved slowly, just as he had from the beginning. He did not seek attention from the visitors or seem interested in the excitement around him. He was simply happy to be near Ethan. The veteran looked across the quarry and remembered the first day he arrived. He had accepted this place because no one else wanted it. He thought he was receiving a forgotten burden. Instead, he found a mission that gave his life new meaning. The following weeks brought more discoveries about the family's history and the legacy connected to the hidden collection. Each answer brought peace to those searching for it. The flooded quarry was no longer a symbol of something abandoned. It became a reminder that some things are not lost forever. Sometimes they are simply waiting for the right person, the right moment, and a loyal companion willing to lead the way. The days after the family reunion at the flooded quarry brought a peaceful change to Ethan Caldwell's life. The place that once felt empty and forgotten had become a gathering point for people searching for connection with their past. The veteran watched as old memories returned through photographs, letters, and conversations that had been separated by generations. He realized that the greatest value of the discovery was not something that could be measured by numbers. It was the feeling of bringing something lost back home. Ethan and Margaret Ellis continued preserving the documents and belongings connected to the quarry's history. They worked carefully, making sure every item was recorded and protected for the future. The hidden collection contained valuable assets, but it also carried something much more important. It carried the hopes of people who wanted their story to survive. Ranger remained a constant presence during those quiet days. The German shepherd often walked through the property with Ethan, following the same paths where the mystery first began. Visitors who came to learn about the discovery quickly noticed the loyal companion who had started everything. Many people thanked Ranger as if he understood the importance of what had happened. Ethan always smiled when he heard that. He knew Ranger had never searched for attention. The dog had simply followed his instincts and stayed beside the person he trusted. As the final details of the discovery were confirmed, experts reviewed the collection and verified the historical significance of what had been preserved. The estimated value connected to the hidden treasure became public knowledge, surprising many people who once believed the flooded quarry had no purpose. But Ethan remained unchanged. He still woke up early, cared for the property, and spent quiet mornings with Ranger near the water. The attention from the outside world did not matter as much as the meaning behind the journey. One afternoon, Ethan received a visit from several members of the family connected to the original owners. They brought more photographs, letters, and stories that helped complete the picture of the past. Together, they created a collection that represented more than financial value. It represented generations of dreams, hard work, and love for a place they once called home. Ethan listened as they shared memories from their families. Some stories were about simple moments, like gatherings near the property or evenings spent together after long days of work. These details reminded Ethan that history was not only made by famous people or important events. It was created through ordinary lives and meaningful moments. As the sun began to set over the flooded quarry, Ethan stood beside Ranger and looked across the calm water. The same place that people once ignored had become a symbol of hope. The veteran thought about the first day he arrived. He remembered the comments from neighbors who believed the property was worthless. They had seen only what was on the surface. They never saw the memories, the connections, or the hidden legacy beneath it all. Ranger rested beside Ethan, peaceful and loyal as always. The German Shepherd had discovered the first clue, but the journey had revealed something far greater. It had shown Ethan that life could still offer unexpected beginnings. He arrived at the quarry believing he was starting over in a forgotten place. Instead, he found a purpose that connected him with people he had never met and a history that had been waiting for someone to care. The following months transformed the property completely. The quarry became a place of remembrance where visitors could learn about the family, the discovery, and the importance of protecting stories from the past. Ethan never considered himself the owner of a treasure. He considered himself the guardian of a legacy. And beside him was the German Shepherd who proved that sometimes the smallest act of loyalty can uncover the greatest hidden treasures of all. Months passed, but the story of Ethan Caldwell and the forgotten quarry continued to inspire everyone who heard it. The place that was once ignored had become a reminder that every corner of the world could hold a story waiting to be remembered. For Ethan, life at the cottage became something he never expected. He arrived searching for peace and a quiet place to begin again, but he discovered a connection between the past and present that changed the way he saw everything. The flooded quarry was no longer just land that others had abandoned. It was a place filled with memories, kindness, and a legacy protected through time. Ethan continued caring for the property every day. He repaired parts of the old cottage, maintained the surrounding land, and welcomed visitors who wanted to learn about the remarkable discovery. But despite the attention surrounding the hidden treasure, Ethan remained the same person who first stepped onto the property with nothing more than hope and a loyal German Shepherd by his side. Ranger continued growing older with grace, spending peaceful mornings walking beside Ethan near the water. The German Shepherd was still known by many as the dog who discovered the first clue, but Ethan always believed Ranger's greatest gift was something deeper. The dog had shown him the importance of paying attention, trusting the quiet moments, and recognizing value where others saw nothing. One cool autumn morning, Ethan stood near the edge of the quarry with Ranger resting beside him. The water reflected the golden colors of the trees, and the silence felt familiar. Ethan thought about the journey that brought him there. He remembered the day when people told him the property was worthless. He remembered arriving at a place everyone had forgotten. And he remembered the first moment Ranger stopped and looked toward the hidden secret beneath the surface. Everything had changed from that single moment. Margaret Ellis visited the cottage one final time to bring Ethan a collection of restored documents. They had completed the preservation of the family history, ensuring that future generations could understand the story behind the discovery. She told Ethan that many people would remember the treasure, but she believed the true miracle was the way it brought people together. Ethan agreed. The value of the discovery was never only about what had been found. It was about what had been restored. It was about families reconnecting, forgotten memories returning, and a place once considered meaningless becoming a symbol of hope. Before leaving, Margaret looked toward Ranger and smiled. She said that without the German Shepherd, the story might have remained hidden forever. Ethan looked at his loyal companion and gently placed a hand beside him. He knew Ranger did not understand the size of the discovery or the attention it created. The dog only understood one thing. Stay close. Protect the person you love. Follow where your heart leads. Years later, people would still visit the flooded quarry and hear the story of the veteran who accepted a forgotten property and discovered a hidden legacy. They would hear about the old documents, the family history, and the treasure preserved beneath years of silence. But the part that touched people the most was always the same. A loyal German Shepherd noticed something everyone else missed, and because of that simple act of trust, an entire story found its way home. Ethan never searched for a fortune. He found something greater. He found purpose, friendship, and a reminder that even the smallest signs of loyalty can lead to the most meaningful discoveries. As the evening light faded over the quiet quarry, Ethan and Ranger remained together, watching the water gently move beneath the sky. Some treasures are measured in gold. Others are measured in the lives they touch. And some stories are not found because someone searches for them. They are found because someone cares enough to notice.